question and answer session. I see that we have a few, we don't have time on our side, but we have a few questions. So Robert, why don't we start with the questions from the Madam Secretary General?
Right, thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. I just want to commend the presenters on the initiatives that are taking place in Samoa. I was very much pleased to hear about the National Identification Project and also about the regulatory reform, the things that are happening to create an enabling environment for digital transformation in Samoa. My question, there are two questions. And the first is concerning the National Identity Project. The presenter indicated that people do not register. Some people do not register their children at birth. So what is the incentive for them to move forward with to embrace the National Identity Project? And the second question is to our regulator, Mrs. Purcell, and I would like to know what the regulator is doing to ensure affordability of access to digital services and also the devices, because in many countries, in many developing countries, access and devices, the cost is prohibitive. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We'll have the first question there, Madam Secretary, for the Leota.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for the question. I think it's a very important question of how we handle the challenges that we have faced in terms of in anticipation of having this national ID. For instance, for information, that we are currently undertaking another project with our UNDP, mainly to strengthen the CRVS, the civil registration, which includes birth, deaths, and marriage. And part of this work is our work with the Ministry of Health to strengthen our relationships, strengthen systems that will enable the data sharing, which have already started now. So it's one of the initiatives that we've started. And as you have seen in the presentation, that this civil registration will also be part of the national ID development as one of the major parts of the national ID project, which will enable that. So in terms of incentives, we have started to have a mobile sort of registration, which we started this year. So which has a really good impact on the registration. As well, in our own records, the registration was around 35% in terms of the children who were born at a certain year. The percentage that was captured or registered was only 35%. So, and for the recent periods, after so many sort of campaign, like our awareness programs, and we even went out to different districts to do registrations. So we're now up to 65 to 70% of that sort of registration, which is a quite big achievement. And I think going ahead, there will be a mass registration that will be conducted as part of this project, which will include the whole country, which is more like a census in its equivalent, despite the fact that we will only capture very few information to be part of it, as well as the biometric information. So that will be part of it. So, and then we will continue to have that sort of registration and to be part of our civil registration, which is the gate to any sort of register, including or national ID. So that will be the way forward. But thanks for raising this. But I think that's where we're moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add on to, I think Leota has, there was a handout of cash. That was one of the incentives that they were using to encourage them to come and register. And I think it was a great thing, because that's cash going straight to the person that will come and register, and at the end of the day, his or her name was on the registry. So that was one of the incentives that they were using at the time.
But if I may add on what Toa said, it's the fact that we're looking at reviewing the legislation in such a way that because at this point in time we also charge the registration. So, but we're looking at having a new legislation whereby we can have that sort of registration free and pay only for the certificate, the issuance of the certificate. So that's one of the incentives. You know, Samoa, we don't have that much resource in terms of financial resources. So we try to have some sort of in-kind sort of assistance for the people to come forward and register. So thank you.
I think, Madam Secretary, did you want to, because there was a question there for Madam Regulator on the affordability. Did you want to repeat your question, please? Because she just arrived.
Right.
She,
Should I repeat? The question is, what steps are the regulator, what steps will the regulator take to ensure that access and devices are affordable? This has been a challenge throughout the Commonwealth, affordability. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam SG, for the question. Right now, affordability is one of the key issues of access. Now, I believe that our Ministry of Revenue and Taxes and Customs have reduced the duty on mobile phones, but I'll need to confirm that. And we are implementing the Universal Access Fund. And I know that that will be one way of looking at areas where we can reduce the cost of handheld sets further. It's a very key issue in terms of the digital transformation. So we will have to look into those areas. At the same time, right now we are doing the consultation on the type approval charges, because Samoa had never charged the manufacturers on the bringing their equipment, digital equipment, to Samoa. And now we have already received the go-ahead from our revenue board to start charging. So the intention is, once that money comes in, then we can look at areas to reduce the cost of the handheld sets. As I mentioned in my presentation, one of the issues is that the operators now want to do away with 2G. But the key issue in doing away with that is the cost of handsets. We have around approximately 700 people who are still using the 2G phone, the button phones. And the regulator is now looking at a way the service providers will have to come up to make sure that those people can afford the new smartphones. So we have already met with the service providers, and we are awaiting their proposal in terms of getting those people to receive or get the smartphones. The key issue there is affordability, because in early last year, we have an awareness program in the island of Savai'i. And when that was mentioned, everyone who put up their 2G phones, they said it's a great idea, but can we afford the cost of the smartphone? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Madam Regulator. We have a quick question here from the audience, Richard Va'alutu. And he's asking, are we allowed to import personal Starlink equipment for high-speed internet connection for personal use?
Thank you.
Madam Regulator, please.
Thank you very much for the question. Our Starlink company had already met with the regulator. At Bangladesh, we met the Afionga Lefao, CEO, Ministry, and myself. And up until now, we still haven't received a formal application by the Starlink company. We also met in Vanuatu. But the key issue for me is affordability, because Starlink is excellent, provides very good speed. But the question I ask is, can the people of my country, can the people of Samoa afford the 550 US cost of the equipment? That is the issue for me. And in some previous discussion, that's what I mentioned to Starlink. Do something about that, and we may consider when you apply. So right now, I'm sorry, the answer is no. People cannot buy Starlink even if they want to, or even if they can afford to. The job of the regulator is looking at everybody, not just the few. We have to consider the have-nots and the haves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more question for Afionga Leota. We have a question from the audience. Aims of so great presentation of Afionga and progress for the national ID project. What if you don't want to have a national ID as an individual?
Thank you, Edsa. I think it's very important that it was considered in the legislation that this will be mandatory sort of registered, making sure that everyone is in there. As you have noticed in my presentation, that one of the slogans that was shown, like the Gisa's presentation, where no one is leaving behind, is everyone counts. So the significance of everyone to be part of that picture is very important, and that will be part of the registration. I think it's legislation is very clear on that, and I think it's a notion that we're working.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for those very informative answers.